Hello, friends. Even the most insensitive person can change if you treat them the right way. Sincere kindness and selfless care can work wonders sometimes. The man featured in this story wasn't evil, but he did get a little arrogant sometimes because he had some extra money that came a bit too easy for him. But the events that happened to him one day changed his outlook on life and those around him forever. One day, the inhabitants of a village witnessed an unusual incident. A young man came to their region. The guest from the big city had just graduated from the university, but thanks to his father's connections, he already had a good position in a company in the oil and gas industry. The man loved traveling, but unlike most of his friends, he didn't like going abroad and staying in expensive resorts, but preferred exploring the lesser-known regions of his own country. He enjoyed looking at the wildlife, as well as studying the life of the ordinary people. Sure, he didn't take trains between the villages, but drove around in his expensive SUV. This car had a decent amount of horsepower, and therefore it was hard to resist speeding up on highways, which is what played a cruel joke on the man of our story. Once, as he was driving past deep forests, the young man sped up too much. The road was slippery, and then suddenly, some horned animal that looked like a deer from a distance jumped out on the road. The man turned the wheel to avoid colliding with the animal, so he hit a tree at full speed instead. The driver lost consciousness in the crash, and when he came to his senses, he was already undressed and in a clean bed. Judging by the situation, the young man wasn't at the hospital, but in an old village hut. He had abrasions on his arm and back, and his head was bandaged. An elderly man came into the room. He was very happy to see that the driver had finally woken up and began telling the young man how he ended up in the hut. It turned out that the young man was at the forester's house. After the accident, he was found in the bushes near the wrecked car. It seemed that the young man managed to get out of the car and crawl to a safe distance, although he didn't remember any of it. But the most interesting thing wasn't that the man survived, but who saved him. There was a wild animal living in the forester's house. The old man found this predator during one of his hunts, when the animal was still very young. His mother was shot by other hunters, and now the animal was doomed to starve to death since he hadn't yet learned how to get food on his own. The man took pity on the cub. He brought him home to his wife and asked her to look after the foundling. The animal survived, got stronger, and a couple years later grew to a rather impressive size. No one could approach the forester's house without an invitation, because now the house had a very responsible guard. Nevertheless, the animal wasn't aggressive. He only growled at strangers, and even that he only did when there was a potential threat to his owner. Therefore, the predator was sometimes released into the wild so that he could take a walk in the forest. Thus, the animal was taking a walk along the road in search of some delicacy and noticed a person lying on the ground. No one knows how he managed to do it, but the animal dragged the unconscious man to the forester's hut, who then provided him with first aid. After listening to the story, the young man thanked his savior, who was lying next to his bed all the time. The young man would have never believed that wild bears were so smart and that they could be so compassionate towards humans. Surprisingly, the bear whom the forester didn't let starve to death didn't just start treating the forester kindly, but other people as well. Or what other explanation could there be? The bear didn't just leave the crash victim to a certain death, but realized that he needed to take the man to the forester. The bear knew that the old man would be able to help the injured driver, just like he once helped the little bear cub. Friends, that's all for today. Like the video, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you next time.